Remember like 6 or 7 years ago where I'd make autism jokes out the ass and call people autistic or call things I don't like autistic? Well, all of that shit is about to age very poorly. Well, not to say it hasn't already aged poorly, because that's just a dumb edgelord mid-2010s humor, but in my case, when it comes to me saying it in the past, it's about to age even worse. Because I, myself, am autistic. Now, I don't know what kind of reaction this video will get. Maybe I'll get people who are like, I knew all along, every time I watch your videos, my radar goes the fuck off. Or maybe some people will be legitimately surprised. I don't know, because I don't exactly remember, but I think I have described myself as not neurodivergent in the past. Because it's always been something about me that I've always tried to bury. I never really talk about it with family or friends. Even though having autism has, of course, taken a huge effect on my day-to-day life. I want to first go over the signs of autism in early childhood, and tell you the ones that applied to me the most. Avoids or does not keep eye contact. That is still me to this day. I cannot look someone in the eyes when I talk to them. That makes me way too anxious. Does not respond to name by 9 months of age. This was me until roughly age 2. I did not make a peep until, God, I think I was almost age 3. I think that's what my parents told me. Does not show facial expressions like happy, sad, angry, and surprised by 9 months of age. I still struggle with this to this day. I'm just not a very expressive person. I try to be more expressive when I'm talking into the microphone for these videos, or when I'm in front of the camera, like say during live streams. I try to make my face more expressive. But even then, I get complaints from people from time to time saying, God, your videos are so fucking boring. You're so fucking monotone. I can't even sit through your fucking videos. And I'm like, sorry, being stoic is in my nature, I guess. Does not notice other children and join them in play by 36 months of age. That is still me to this day with other adults. Someone would have to actually invite me to their group in order for me to join them, and even then, there's still a possibility that I'll say no. It's not that I don't want to join your friend group, it's just that one of the byproducts of autism for me is severe social anxiety. I begin to be engulfed by these thoughts like, what if I make a fool of myself? Why do they want to waste their time with someone like me? What if this goes wrong? What if that goes wrong? I'm really fucking afraid of social interaction. Just the other night, during a New Year's party, my cousins wanted me to join them to play a game where they were flipping plastic cups in hopes to get them to land on a bottle. I was so hesitant to join them. I was so close to saying no, but then I was like, you know what? I haven't spoken to anyone all night. It was already after 12, after the new year began. So why not join them? I actually ended up having fun, and not to toot my own horn too much, but I was a little bit better at that cup flipping game than I initially thought. But even after positive experiences like that, I don't learn. Next time I'm forced to be in a social situation, I'm going to fucking panic, like I usually do. Does not sing, dance, or act for you by 60 months of age. This one's kind of weird to me because, well, even at age 21, I wouldn't do that shit. And even then, I didn't know a lot of kids growing up who would sing, dance, or act on command like that. Let's move on to signs of autism for adults. Finding it hard to understand what others are thinking or feeling. Yeah, someone would have to actually tell me what they're thinking or feeling because I can't pick up on that through facial expressions alone. I've always struggled to read facial expressions, unless it's something as blatantly obvious as someone visibly crying or in a fit of rage. Getting very anxious about social situations. I've already talked about this ad nauseum in this video alone and in several other videos, so let's move on to the next one. Finding it hard to make friends or preferring to be on your own. Now, I think everyone values their alone time. I don't think there's anyone out there who would prefer to be in social settings 24/7, but I prefer to be on my own to a fault, to the point where I find it very hard to make friends on my own. Every friend I made in high school, I was introduced to. And easily the bestest friend I made in high school was someone who started talking to me first, and he was the one that introduced me to a lot of the friends I made in high school. Unfortunately, he was a year older than me, and he was only in a few of my classes in sophomore year, so once all of the friends he introduced me to graduated because they were all a year older than me as well, I barely had any friends left in high school by senior year. And I never really made an attempt to make more on my own in senior year. I mostly just kept myself. Seeming blunt, rude, or not interested in others without meaning to. Going back to that New Year's party from the other night that I mentioned earlier in this video, the reason we had that New Year's party in the first place was to keep my great uncle company, because his wife, my great aunt, died recently, on Christmas Day of all days. She battled Alzheimer's since 2008, 2009, I forget which year exactly, but I know it was one of those 2 years. During her wake, I found out that her and my great uncle were married for 68 years. So this was his first New Year's after her death. So once the clock struck midnight and the new year began, we were all hugging each other, telling each other Happy New Year, and a lot of my cousins were crying, because this will be the first full year without my great aunt. I was comforting one of my cousins, she's just a year older than me, and I was telling her things like, I know how you feel, I lost my grandmother a few years ago, and I was the same exact way when 2021 hit, because that was the first full year without my grandma. But after the fact, I felt like I came off a bit cold, because of the way I was saying things like, I know how you feel, I lost my grandma too, because I wasn't saying it in a consoling type way, I was saying it more in a direct, blunt kind of way, like, yeah, I know how you feel, I lost my grandma too. I didn't mean to come across that way, that's just how I naturally speak. I don't think she thought much of it, she didn't comment on that or anything. If anything, I think she did appreciate my comfort. But I do feel the way I expressed those words could have been a lot fucking better. Finding it hard to say how you feel. This is a big one for me. I may seem open in these videos, but I am not open at all in real life. If something is bothering me, or if I'm having a shitty day, or if depression is just too much to bear on a certain day, I don't talk to anyone about it. I'd rather keep my emotions bottled in. And I'm not saying that like it's a good thing, don't get me wrong. I understand how unhealthy it is to keep yourself bottled in like that. But I've always found it very challenging to express how I feel to others. I made an honest effort to be more open to people shortly after my grandmother died, but I ended up slinking back to my old ways a few months after. Taking things very literally. For example, you may not understand sarcasm or phrases like break a leg. Well, I understand what someone means when they say break a leg to me. I don't hear the phrase break a leg and then go seek out a leg to snap or anything, but there are times where I find it difficult to detect sarcasm. For example, and this just happened recently, I always tell my Amazon Echo to turn off my TV, because I guess I just can't be fucked to pick up the remote and do it myself. But anyways, one day I did this in front of my mother, and my mother said, what if Alexa says someday, do it yourself? Now, for most people, they would be able to tell she was saying this in an obvious joking tone. But me, I initially took it as an insult, and I got a little upset. And she was like, damn, I'm just joking, calm down. And then I just felt like a fucking idiot afterwards. Having the same routine every day and getting very anxious if it changes. This is me to a T. For example, I like binging TV shows from roughly 9:30 p.m. to around 12:30 to 1 a.m. Afterwards, I like playing video games up until 3:05 a.m. Why 3:05 a.m.? Because that's usually the time I get too tired to play video games, but not tired enough to actually fall asleep. I usually just watch YouTube or some shit for like an hour or two afterwards. And if anything comes up to break this routine, I get very annoyed, and like this article says, very anxious. Because it's a routine I'm used to. It's a fucking tradition for me every night. And I don't know, I just feel threatened in some kind of way whenever this routine is broken. There are some exceptions though, like again, the New Year's party from the other night. And also, when I was doing my finals just a few weeks ago, I wouldn't watch TV at all on some nights because I would be busy writing papers. And doing that didn't really bother me because I understood that, you know, getting a good grade in my classes is far more important than binging TV at certain hours of the night. Not understanding social rules, such as not talking over people. This is another box I tick. When I have something I really want to say during a conversation, I just say it, even if someone is already talking. Which is very hypocritical because I hate it when people do the same to me. I try my best to restrain it. I really try not to talk over someone in conversations, but sometimes the impulse just gets the better of me. Some of you watching this may have noticed in the past that I sometimes do this during Discord calls, on the rare occasions that I do participate in Discord VCs. Having a very keen interest in certain subjects or activities. GameCube. I'll just leave it at that. Liking to plan things very carefully before doing them. Going back to my gaming sessions, before I start a session, I like to plan out how long said session will be. Like, say, for example, I start at 4:30, and I feel like playing for about 2 hours. So I'm like, I'll stop around 6:30, 6:45, and more often than not, the time I told myself I will stop at is the time that I actually end my session, unless I'm really fucking into a game. And when I want to stop earlier than that, I start to feel anxious, and I'm like, but I had this time set to end. I don't want to end earlier than that. I had a routine set, and even when I myself want to break the routine, I start to feel very anxious. And one final symptom I want to touch up on, and the NHS says that this is a symptom for autistic women, but I kind of contest to this, have learned to hide signs of autism to quote-unquote fit in by copying people who don't have autism. I can personally relate to this. Now, I didn't copy things like the vernacular of my friends or the exact way my friends act or try to dress like them or anything like that. I still was very much my own person, but what I would copy is the mockery of other neurodivergent students in my high school. Like, for example, there was a kid in sophomore year who was put into mainstream classes. He had noticeably more severe autism than my own. He was a very smart kid, but, had his quirks, and a lot of people would make fun of him for that. And I was one of those people. I knew even back then that I was probably neurodivergent myself because I would look at things like these lists of symptoms for autism and notice that I tick a lot of these boxes. But since I wanted to appear more normal than this kid, I would partake in mocking him. That was absolutely scumfuck behavior and there was no justification for it. And by the way, all of my old videos where I call other people autistic and call other things autistic and make fun of other people's autism. Yeah, that shit was all projection. I didn't like potentially being neurodivergent, mainly because it's always stunted me when it comes to making friends and being in social situations in general. So I would take out my frustrations on people who are more openly neurodivergent or more neurodivergent than I am. So, I was essentially a bully. I didn't like that these people can accept these parts of themselves while I can't, and even to this day, I still struggle to embrace the autism. That's why I've been so fucking quiet about it all these years, because it's a part of me that I try to bury and not pay much mind to, even though it affects my day-to-day life in a huge way. What made me finally want to come to grips with it was my dad giving me a camcorder that him and my mom bought around the time I was born that has a lot of videos of me as a baby. But in the bag that contained that camcorder and the tapes to put in that camcorder was also a paper for my pre-K graduation. And that is when I found out that the preschool I went to was a preschool specifically for children with autism. I had no fucking clue that preschool I went to was a special needs school until this past November. And that's what made me finally decide that my first formal video of this year will be me coming out and saying that I am autistic myself. I've been preaching since at least 2020 that ableism is wrong and awful, and those videos were genuine, don't get me wrong, but I've always maintained that for other people. When it comes to myself, I have so much internalized ableism. I think to myself, why can't I just be fucking normal? Why did I have to be born with this neurodivergent brain? Most of this frustration comes from me being seemingly unable to connect and relate to a lot of other people. I understand I am not special. There are millions of people out there with autism and with social anxiety, but I still really struggle to talk with other people. I struggle to make friends. And that's why for the longest time I've hated this part of myself, but I do want to finally embrace this part of myself. And I feel like a big step in embracing this part of myself is letting the audience of people who watch my videos know that I am neurodivergent myself, because if I were to continue to pretend that I am not neurodivergent to an audience of people, then that's not really embracing who I really am. That would be continuing to bury myself in shame and self-hatred, and I want to stop doing that. I don't know if I'll make any huge changes this year in 2023. I don't have any resolutions or any of that shit, because I've always felt that New Year's resolutions are bullshit and, something that most people don't even fucking stick to. But one thing I do want to change this year is being more open about who I am. And being neurodivergent is part of who I am, whether I want it to be or not. I apologize if this isn't the typical I am autistic and proud, autism empowerment type video or whatever the fuck, but that's not entirely where I'm at currently, unfortunately. Maybe someday in the future I'll be at that point, but unfortunately at this current point in time, I am not there yet. Maybe uploading this video and going public about my autism will be a huge step in getting towards that point. We'll see. Anyway, that's all I have to say. Bye-bye.